Information, please. Presented each week at this time by Canada Dry, famous the world over for its fine beverages. Wake up, America. Time to stump the experts and treat yourself to a glass of cool, refreshing Canada Dry ginger ale. Every week at this time, Canada Dry presents Information, Please. We supply 4 experts ready and willing to take on any and all questions. You supply the stickers. You may submit from 1 to 3 original questions. For every question our quartet fails to answer, the sender gets $10 with the compliments of Canada Dry. For every question we use, whether or not it's answered correctly, the sender gets $5. So you can make $15 if our experts miss out, which they occasionally do. Our editorial staff may reword your question a trifle. Don't worry about it. Whenever there is a duplication of questions, Information Please uses the one that was submitted first. All questions become the property of Information Please and should be addressed to Canada Dry, 1 Pershing Square, New York City. And now, may I present our Master of Ceremonies, Mr. Clifton Fadiman, literary critic of the New Yorker magazine. Mr. Fadiman.
Ladies and gentlemen, these questions are now submitted to our board for the first time. The program is entirely unrehearsed and as informal as you please. Seated opposite me, their legs tucked under a long table, our 3 veterans. Franklin P. Adams, the famous conductor of the Conning Tower column in the New York Post. John Kieran, the sports expert, who last week shot the show from under me by answering the questions before I asked them. And Oscar Levant, pianist and composer, now keeping himself busy as the musical director of the hit show The American Way. And our guest of honor is an expert on a great many things, including the fine old tradition of American liberty. Formerly a member of Congress from Texas, he is now the hard-hitting mayor of San Antonio. I introduce to you the author of In Blood and Ink, and the bearer of a name famous in the history of the Southwest, Maury Maverick. Now, gentlemen, each miss that you make will cost Canada Dry $10, which is cheerfully dispatched to the sender of the question, together with another 5, just for the use of it. And if you're ready, so am I. But before I begin the formal questioning, I'd like to know how much the regular members of the board know about the very distinguished name of our guest this evening. Now, the word Maverick has, of course, passed into the English language, and it's going to stay there. Can you gentlemen give me the meaning and origin of the word? You stay out of this, Mr. Maverick. Mr. Levant.
Kathleen Maverick.
Oh, sounds like an Irish bull, Mr. Levant. I'll keep that on the side. See whether Mr. Adams can do a little better for us. Mr. Adams.
The brand on a horse, or a horse that was not branded, and I think it came originally from Mr. Maverick's family.
That is a fair guess, considering the similarity.
Is that true?
Of names.
I think these people are trying to frame me, the country boy coming to New York City.
Now, you tell it, Mr. Maverick.
You want me to tell the story right? Well, I'll tell it for you.
Tell it right, but tell it short, Mr.
Okay.
Maverick.
My grandfather was named Samuel A. Maverick. He took in 453 head of cattle, and they were in the hands of a colored slave, and he wouldn't brand them, so they called him Maverick's cattle, and that's all there is to it. He never was a cattleman, like people say. And also, there's another thing. He only branded his own cattle. Some people say that he branded everybody's cattle, but he only branded his own.
Well, I guess you never had an opportunity to defend your grandfather to as large an audience as you've had this evening, Mr. Maverick. Thanks for the explanation, which is very interesting. And what does the word Maverick generally mean now in our language?
Well, for instance, like LaGuardia, he's unbranded. He's a man of free opinion. It means a man that's not branded, that has his own opinions and independent. That's what it means.
One who won't play with the crowd. If he
That's right.
The crowd's right. A darn good word. All right. We won't lose any money or make any money on that question. Very glad to get that story from you, Mr. Maverick. Now for the real stuff. Here's where you stub your toe, Mr. Maverick. This one comes from Tom Jackson of Brooklyn, New York. Question about shooting. What is the occupation of the man who goes out to shoot Polaris? Polaris. What's his occupation? Mr. Adams? You've got it, Mr. Adams, practically.
I think he shoots skunk.
Oh, you couldn't possibly be wrong, though. I hate to say what that answer does. Mr. Kieran.
Well, he's either an astronomer or a seaman.
Yes, probably the latter. What does Polaris mean, Mr. Kieran?
It's the pole star.
Yes, the pole star.
I thought it was Polaris, Felis, or the polecat.
Mr. Kieran, what do you think of Mr. Adams' Latin, which I think he made up on the spur of the moment?
His Latin's all right, but his natural history is mephitic.
All you have to do now, Mr. Mephitic.
I know what that means.
Well, that's one wrong. We can't allow Mr. Kieran to win that for us, Mr. Adams. What is the occupation of the man who goes out to shoot the grade? Shoot the grade. Shoot the grade.
What's a grade?
What is a grade? I can't explain. Mr. Maverick?
Well, he must be an engineer.
He's an engineer, a civil engineer, or a surveyor, yes. What's the occupation of the man who goes out to shoot an actor? Don't tell me dramatic critic, boys. Mr. Levant.
Well, not a dramatic critic?
No. I
Playwright?
disappointed you, didn't it? No.
Cameraman.
Yes, cameraman. Cameraman for the movies. Quite right, Mr. Levant. The occupation of the man who goes out to shoot a buck.
A what?
A buck.
A deer hunter.
I beg pardon, Mr. Maverick?
He's a deer hunter.
He's a deer hunter, and what else might he be, Mr.
A
Adams?
dice player.
Yes, a dice player. Ladies and gentlemen, you can see the difference between the cultures of Mr. Maverick and Mr. Adams by their answer to that single question. We got 3 out of 4, but Mr. Jackson wanted 4 out of 4, so Canada Dry is going to pay him $10, plus the $5 for the use of the question. The next one from Mr. H. Lewis of Chicago, Illinois, is a 2-part question having to do with some of the laws of our country. Now, in the Constitution or its amendments, what prevents a state from interfering with freedom of speech or press? That's the first part of the question. Mr. Levant.
The Bill of Rights.
Let me
Mr.
answer.
Maverick.
The Bill of Rights has no reference to a state doing that whatever. That's a popular misconception.
Well, you're popular anyway.
I
The
came
fourth-
through, huh?
The 14th Amendment refers to due process of law, and the Supreme Court wrote that into the Constitution. The Bill of Rights does not guarantee freedom of speech as against a state
That's
or
correct.
a city.
Now, nothing really prevents the state from interfering with freedom of speech or the press. Now, Mr. Levant, you see you were perfectly right, except you were just on the wrong side.
He said it was a popular misconception, which I represent.
Very nice to have a representative of the public here, Mr. Levant. Nevertheless, I think you'll have to count us wrong on that. Sorry. What in the Constitution, or its amendments again, allows the Supreme Court to declare laws unconstitutional? Now, Mr. Levant, would you like to come in on
No,
that?
I'm through on
All right. Mr. Maverick, you have your hand up.
There's nothing in the Constitution that gives the Supreme Court the right to declare an act of Congress unconstitutional. John Marshall was the first one to enunciate that doctrine, and that's just been done by the Supreme Court. They've arrogated or assumed that right, and so that's how they got it.
Go to the head of the class, Mr. Maverick. That's perfect. That's perfect. I wish you'd come in on the first part of this, Mr. Maverick, because that's going to cost Canada Dry $10 going out to Mr. Lewis, Chicago, Illinois. We'll get to you, Mr. Levant. The next question from Maisie Hall of Jacksonville, Florida, has to do with real or fictional characters. I'm going to ask you what character, real or fictional, was identified by means of a song. A song. Mr. Kieran?
Richard the Lionhearted.
Want to tell us a little bit about it?
Blondel, as minstrel, went to heard that King Richard was in prison in a castle in France, and he went about France playing this song, and King Richard answered him from the tower.
Bullseye. What were you going to add to that, Mr.
A
Levant?
little popular misconception. Would Ramona have been wrong?
Would Ramona have been wrong?
Yeah.
Who is Ramona? Oh, the Indian.
Yeah.
Don't know. Never read the book.
Well, that's a popular misconception again.
You'll stick to that, Mr. Levant. All right. What character, real or fictional, was identified by means of a scar behind his left ear? A scar behind his left ear. This is getting pretty specific. Mr. Levant.
I saw that in the Iron Mask last week. Can that be that phony brother of Louis the something?
You bet.
Huh?
You've got all your facts correct. The phony brother of Louis the something is quite right. It's Philippe, the twin brother of Louis the 14th, famous for furniture.
Who came
Louis
to no
XIV.
good end, according.
And do you know the story, Mr. Levant?
Yes, there are 3 or 4 legends, which I don't think any of them are correct. I have the real story.
You have the...
Information, please, secures a scoop.
You
All
better
right,
let Mr.
Levant.
Kieran. He's.
No, I was just going to say Oscar has the popular misconception.
Well, you know, he was recognized, Philippe, the twin brother, was recognized by the 3 Musketeers as their ward, Philippe, when he shows them the scar behind his ear. Very valuable piece of information. Now, what character, real or fictional, was identified by means of a split arrow? A split arrow.
Is that an Indian?
Nope. Nope.
I'm through then.
No, you're out, Mr. Levant. Mr. Kieran.
Robin Hood.
You're absolutely right.
And,
what's the story on
it's
that?
in Ivanhoe.
Yeah.
He split the shaft of the rival marksman at the famous tournament of Ashby de la Zouche and was immediately hailed as Robin Hood.
There you go again, Mr. Kieran. Absolutely right, of course, as Mr. Kieran generally is. Mr. Maverick?
I just wanted to say
Don't
that
contradict him, Mr. Maverick.
I just want to say I just want to say to the radio audience that there's no frame-up about this. He really answered that question.
And when the next congressman says that, we can depend on his word, can't we?
No, the mayor of San Antonio.
I beg your pardon. Now, what character, real or fictional, was identified by means of a foot? A foot. Mr. Levant.
12 o'clock, they coached Cinderella.
You got it. You got it. All right. She was recognized by her footprint, so to speak, wasn't she, Mr. Levant?
Well,
Get it? No.
I didn't know her very
There's
well.
another.
All right, Mr. Maverick.
Bigfoot Wallace in Texas. He had such big feet that they recognized him by his big feet.
Like to get the local color from you, Mr. Maverick. Thanks so much. Hope there are a lot of Texans listening in. The next question from Mabel Forbes of Birmingham, Alabama, has to do with some famous animals in fiction and legend. Whom did these animals rescue? The first are geese. Whom did geese rescue? Mr. Kieran.
They saved Rome from an attack. They cackled on the Capitol, I believe.
That's quite right. You believe. You know, Mr. Kieran. It's a very improbable story, as a matter of fact, if I'm any judge of gooseflesh, Mr. Kieran. The next set of animals, ravens. Whom did ravens rescue? Ravens? Mr. Adams.
Elijah.
Elijah. In what book?
The Old Testament.
The Old Testament. You wouldn't know in what book of the Old Testament it was, would you, Mr. Adams?
No, I don't.
I've forgotten for the moment. Mr. Levant?
The ravens, the arrival of two ravens symbolized death in the Nibelungen ring in the Götterdämmerung, which is the opposite of what you just
Yes,
asked.
yeah, and that's a nice bit of information again. I'm very glad to get it, Mr. Levant. The next, whom did an ass rescue? An ass. Mr. Levant.
Issachar. No.
Issachar?
No. That's one of Jacob's sons. It means something about an ass's bone or a jaw or something.
Yeah, but I don't think that's quite the story. This is the story of a rescue. Mr. Kieran.
You mean alive or dead?
What?
Well, Samson used the jawbone of
No,
an ass.
I mean a whole ass, not the jawbone.
David? David and his son, Absalom?
No,
He was dead. He killed him.
Now you're guessing, Mr. Levant. Now you're guessing.
I've been guessing for years.
You've been doing very well so far. Mr. Kieran?
Well, it's the story of Balaam.
Well, all right. Why didn't you tell us that at the beginning? It was Balaam's ass who turned aside from the angel with the drawn sword, who was invisible to Balaam, but visible to the ass. That's right. Now, whom did a mouse rescue? A mouse. Just an ordinary little mouse, gentlemen. Cute, eh, Mr. Levant?
Well,
Mr. Maverick.
In Aesop's fables, he saved the lion.
He saved the lion, yes. He repaid him when he was caught in a trap. He gnawed the ropes and set the lion free. Well, we got 3 out of 4 on that, and that's all that was asked for. Thank you. The next one from Donald Wetmore of Astoria, Long Island. The pianist is going to play from well-known compositions. He's going to play passages which precede cadenzas, and I am not going to tell you what a cadenza is, not knowing. And Mr. Levant is asked to carry on by playing the cadenzas. We'll have the first as soon as Mr. Levant has moved over to the piano. All set? Yes. Awfully easy the way you do it, Mr. Levant. Where are we now?
It's the end of the Moonlight Sonata.
Yes, the end of Beethoven's famous Moonlight Sonata, which Mr. Levant rippled off as easy as you please. Let's have the second one. Good enough, Mr. Levant. Good enough. And we identify the music for us. Yes, let's leave this round. Mr. Kieran supplied the answer to that question. Let's have the third and last. Yeah, I wish we could go on doing that all evening, Mr. Levant. The last, of course, was Chopin's famous revolutionary etude.
That's
Mr.
not a
Lev-
cadenza.
I beg pardon? Not a
That's not a
cadenza?
cadenza,
What
no.
is a cadenza?
A cadenza is to permit a soloist, usually, some kind of florid display where he can win and attract over an audience. It usually appears at the end of a piece.
Isn't it just before the end?
Before the end, and sometimes, don't kid yourself, it's only before the end of the first movement, then the second movement.
Oh, gee, this goes on
But it
forever.
was, The origin is, I think, an Italian opera many, many centuries ago, before all of our times.
That's very probable, unless Mr.